your thanks for the invitation. Before starting the presentation, if you have headphones available, just put it on because I will be playing some demo samples throughout the talk. As Honza said, we have at the University of Sherbrooke pretty long history with speech and audio coding. In the past years, we have basically concentrated our effort in the traditional monophonic telephony. So we are targeting basically the scenario, the very classical communication scenario where you have two people talking to each other. And these people, well, they have their mobile phones equipped with usually one single monophonic microphone and one speaker. Now here is a list of some important standards that we have developed in the last years. So let me just pinpoint one most recent codec that we have developed. It's the 3GPP EVS codec. The EVS has been standardized in 2014 by the 3GPP, and it's currently used in pretty much all the LTE networks throughout the world. So chances are that you are also using our codec in your own smartphones nowadays. Now, a few years back, we have actually started a new work on a new codec. It has the name IVAS. The shortcut IVAS stands for Immersive Voice and Audio Services. The work on the codec is not finished yet. It's well in progress, but I would say it's in pretty advanced state. And my humble guess is that with a good luck, it could be finished in the next year, so 2023. It's again to be standardized by the 3GPP, and it should be used in the next generation of LTE networks. Now, in this IVAS codec, we are actually trying to introduce something new, a new feature into mobile communications, and this new feature is spatial audio, and this is the topic of today's call. So before jumping to spatial audio, let me just very briefly say something about the most salient features of the EVS codec. So this is a mono codec. It's been designed for conversational applications, and it's been trained on both speech, music, and mixed content. It supports various sample rates from 8 up to 48 kilohertz. It can encode information at bit rates ranging from 6 kilobits per second up to 128. And it's pretty fast. It has very low algorithmic delay, only 32 milliseconds. And I will now play you two short demo samples, one at a low bit rate of 7.2 kilobits per second and one at a higher bit rate of 32 kilobits per second. So let's give it a try. So this was 7.2 and now 32.
I am afraid we didn't hear anything. Did you share with the screen also the sound?
Yeah, I hope I did. Share sound.
Yeah.
How about now?
To administer medicine to animals is frequently a very difficult matter, and yet sometimes it's necessary to do so.
So this was 7.2 and 32.
To administer medicine to animals is frequently a very difficult matter, and yet sometimes it's necessary to do so.
Yeah, so I have no idea what you heard, but you should have heard a big difference between the two. Yeah, so basically at 7.2 is one of the lowest bit rates, and 32 is the one that would give you pretty much a transparent quality, which is the reason why I didn't play the original sound. The graph on the right-hand side actually shows the results of a subjective test that has been done at Nokia. So in the subjective test, EVS was compared against a bunch of other codecs, including AMR, Opus, G719. And as you can see, the EVS gives superior quality pretty much in the entire range of bit rates. I should have some pointer available, but I don't know how I would. Yeah, okay, here I have the pointer. So let me try. Okay, can you see the pointer? Okay, hopefully so. So what you just heard, this 7.2 was a super wideband, so sampling rate 32, and the bit rate at that point is here. And the 32 kilobits per second was again super wideband, so it's this one here. And the lines, they actually correspond to the quality of original sound. So what you can see is that in this test at 32 kilobits per second, the quality was very, very close to transparency. All right, so as I said, in the IVAS codec, we are trying to bring a new feature, which is the spatial sound. So we are actually targeting mobile communication scenarios, for example, like the teleconferencing scenario, where we have a bunch of people sitting around a table discussing something. You may have multiple speakers talking at the same time. And if we have only monophonic codecs employed, basically the only chance or the only possibility that we would have is to combine all the sounds from all the microphones that you may have installed on the table together to get one single down mix. So I will play now another demo to you, which will be a simulated conversation. And you should hear multiple voices combined together. So let's. PowerPoint seems to have crashed on my side. Yay. Let me just give me 1 second to restart the PowerPoint. Okay, presentation. Share, how do I share my screen?
You are sharing, Ladja.
Am I sharing the screen?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Not sure if the yes, we can see it. Yeah, very nice.
Okay, so here is the demo. Let me just double check if I share the sound. Yes, I do.
Rice is often served in round
The box
bowls.
was thrown
The
beside
source
the
of the
truck.
huge
We don't
river
get
is the
much
clear
money, but we
spring.
have fun.
Okay, so what you should have heard is basically towards the end, there were 3 speakers talking at the same time, and this was all combined into a single monophonic sound. So this is called the cocktail party effect. Basically, for a human person, when hearing this sound, it is pretty complicated to distinguish the speakers, one from the others. So this is basically the motivation for us to come up with a different way of encoding sound in such a scenario. In our vision, we actually are targeting something which is called a sound field representation or sound field capturing device. So we would like to basically see some specialized microphones in the middle of the conference rooms. It turns out that such microphones already exist, and one of them is in this picture. This is a Zelia microphone. It contains, I think, 16 capsules, and those capsules are actually tiny microphones, and each one of them is pointing in a different direction in the 3D space. So with such a sound-filled microphone, you can record sounds from different directions in the room. Question is now what to do with them, how to encode the information of all those microphone capsules in a compact format and send it over the mobile network. Before jumping into the description, let me play you the same sound, but this time you will hear binaural audio. It will be a stereophonic sound, and you should be able now to distinguish the voices from the directions where they come from. So let's give it a try.
Rice is often served in round
The box
bowls.
was thrown
The
beside
source
the
of the
truck.
huge
We don't
river
get
is the
much
clear
money, but we
spring.
have fun.
So I hope you heard at least a little difference.
No, it looked like a mono.
Can you play again, maybe?
Yeah, and I will check if no, but the stereo audio should be on in the meeting settings.
Say it again, Honzo.
Well, I think it was still mono. So if you if you can play it again.
I should have checked stereo.
Rice is often served in round
The box
bowls.
was thrown
The
beside
source
the
of the
truck.
huge
We
river
don't get
is the
much
clear
money, but we
spring.
have fun.
This is much better.
Okay, sorry for that. It's actually the first time for me to do stereo over Zoom. Anyway, so here we are actually not trying to reinvent the wheel. We found that there was a certain guy, Michel Gerson, who developed the entire theory of sound field representation back in the 70s. And he was the first one who used the name ambisonics. So ambisonics is a universal full sphere sound format, which is based on plane wave decomposition. So basically in ambisonics, we are trying to find a way, a mathematical description of the sound on the entire sphere around some sweet spot. Now we are using in ambisonics a spherical coordinate system. I think you all know how it works, but just to briefly mention, in spherical coordinate system, we have the radius r, and then the azimuth theta and the elevation phi. And we are trying to find a way how to describe the acoustic pressure P on this sphere. So now we will jump into a little bit of mathematics, but don't be afraid. It's not going to be too complicated. You may remember something from the physics class. The sound propagation in air is or can be described by the Helmholtz equation, sometimes called the wave equation. And this equation is written just on the top line. So you see that in that complicated equation, there are the spherical coordinates r, theta, and phi. That is the acoustic pressure P. And finally, there is the time t. So this equation describes how sound propagates in the air in the 3D space. Now, the Helmholtz equation has one unique solution. It's not very easy to get it, but we will not go through the derivations. I will just briefly describe one possible format of the solution, which is written in a frequency domain. You can get a similar one in time domain. So this one uses omega, the angular frequency. And on the left-hand side, you have the solution for the acoustic pressure P. And as you can see, the solution is very simple. It's basically just a weighted sum of some basis functions, which are this I and M, and this is called the spherical harmonic functions. So the solution to the wave equation is analog, that there is one-to-one analogy to the discrete Fourier transform. Basically in DFT, you have also a sum, a weighted sum of the complex exponentials. You have the parameter k in complex exponentials, which will give you the multiples of the harmonics. Here, instead of k, you have the n and m. N is called the ambisonic order, m is the mode, and the spherical harmonic functions, they depend on theta and phi, not on omega like in the DFT, but it's pretty much the same principle. Then instead of the spectral coefficients, what you have in DFT, this time you have so-called ambisonic coefficients, B and M. And the difference to the DFT is that the spectral, the spectrum is actually just complex values, amplitude and phase. Here, the coefficients are actually functions. They are either functions of time or frequency. In this description, it's the angular frequency. So it is not necessary to know how the spherical harmonic functions look mathematically. The description would be somewhat complicated, but actually we can visualize them in the 3D space, and this is how they look like. So for order 0, you have just one single spherical harmonic function corresponding to the omnidirectional sound. So it's basically a constant value around the sphere. And this is pretty similar to the DC component in DFT. Then for order 1, you have 3 spherical harmonic functions. This would correspond to, in DFT, it would correspond to the sinusoid with the first harmonic, k equal to 1. So in this case, you have 3 spherical harmonic functions, and each one is actually sensitive in one particular direction, either along the axis x, the axis y, or the axis z. By increasing the ambisonic order to 2, 3, and more, you basically get more and more complicated spherical harmonic functions, and you basically are increasing the accuracy of the spherical harmonic expansion. So you get more and more accurate spatial representation. Now the encoding process is actually pretty simple. So if you have a plane wave sound source S coming from certain direction, which is described by the angle theta and phi, it can be converted into the ambisonic domain with just very simple operation. All what you have to do is to take the signal ST and multiply it with the spherical harmonic functions. And here in this example, if we take the first order ambisonics, well, that means that the order is limited to n equal to 1. Basically, you have just 4 ambisonic components, the so-called DC component W and the 3 directional components X, Y, and Z. You can see that to get from the sound source to the ambisonic representation, all what is required is just a very simple multiplication with some trigonometric functions. So this is pretty tractable, it's very easy, and it has very low complexity. Now, once we have the sound in the ambisonic representation or in the spherical harmonic domain, we can do multiple tricks with it. And I can show you one such trick. The ambisonic channels can be combined into so-called virtual microphones. And here is the way how to do it. So basically, all we have to do is to weight the individual ambisonic components, W, X, Y, and weight it with some values. So here I have used the simple factor alpha, which is a value ranging from 0 to 1. And the graph on the right side shows what happens if we change the pattern from 0 to 1. So you can see that by changing this pattern, we create various shapes of microphones, from the omnidirectional microphone through a figure of 8 microphone, or a hypercardioid, supercardioid, and so on and so on. So, for example, the beamforming in ambisonic domain is very simple and very straightforward. So this is the encoding process. Now the decoding, well, in the decoding process, we have actually two options. Either we do either the listener is sitting in a room surrounded by loudspeakers. In this case, we call it loudspeaker rendering, or the listener is sitting in a chair and he has some headphones. In this case, we call it binaural rendering. So for loudspeaker rendering, the assumption is that the listener is surrounded with n loudspeaker signals, S1 to Sn. And at the what he will receive from the network is the ambisonic representation. In this case, it's just the first order ambisonics, so W, X, Y, and Z. And what we need to do is to convert from W, X, Y, and Z to S1 up to Sn. And the decoding process is actually also very, very simple. It's basically just matrix multiplication. So I will now show you how to find and calculate the matrix D. So this is as I said, it's very simple. Basically, it's driven by the same equation that you already saw. This time on the left side, we have the ambisonic representation, W, X, Y, and Z. Just ignore the square root of 2. It's just for normalization purposes. On the right side, you have the loudspeaker signals S1 up to Sn. And in the middle, you basically have the spherical harmonic functions. This time, they are using the angles of various loudspeakers. So phi1, theta1 points to loudspeaker 1, phi2, theta2 points to loudspeaker 2, and so on up to the nth loudspeaker. This entire matrix, let's call it C. Now, our unknowns are actually on the right-hand side. So we want to find S1 to Sn, and everything else we know. So what we have to do is to solve this system of 4 linear equations. But the problem is that we have n unknowns. And usually what happens is that we have more loudspeakers than ambisonic coefficients. So the system is actually underdetermined, and it leads to many different solutions. This is a little problem, but it can be solved. One way how to solve it is use the pseudo-inverse method. And the pseudo-inverse method will actually lead to the least squared solution. And here is how it works. So this is the pseudo-inverse in the middle. And this is our matrix D that we need to find. Good thing is that the matrix D can be pre-calculated in advance. Because at the remote end, we know where the loudspeakers are located. The second scenario that I talked about is the binaural rendering. And intuitively, you would feel that it would be possible to do the same things, meaning that we should be able to calculate the matrix D that would convert the ambisonic representation directly into the left and the right ear signals. But actually, our experience is that this doesn't really give a good quality. So in practice, we do a little bit more complicated way. We first do the loudspeaker rendering, with virtual loudspeakers. And then we calculate the binaural signals for the left and the right ear for each one of those loudspeakers. I know it's complicated, but this actually gives much better quality. And it turns out that it's not that complex and complicated. So the function that for each loudspeaker, you have to have a pair of transfer functions to the left and the right ear, and this pair of functions is called the HRTFs, head-related transfer functions. And these HRTFs are actually very individual, so they vary from one person to another. But it's ideally you would use the HRTFs as so-called individually. So you would have your own database of HRTFs for each possible loudspeaker location. But there are already databases on the internet freely available where people have measured the HRTFs using very complicated setup. So this is how it works in practice. The HRTFs are usually measured in an anechoic chamber where you have a rotating chair, and on that chair you have either a dummy head or a real human being, well, a real person, and you have a hemisphere of small loudspeakers around you. And each one of those loudspeakers is playing a short deterministic sound. Usually it's a sweep signal. And in the ears, you have small microphones recording the response. And then by a simple deconvolution, you get basically the HRTF. Now, once one measurement is done, the chair rotates, I don't know, by 5 degrees to the right, and the same experiment is repeated. And then again by 5 degrees, and so on, until the entire sphere is covered by measurement points. So one of those free databases is for example, the SETI2D2. This has been provided by the University of York, and in this database you have more than 8,000 measurement points. So it's pretty dense. So this concludes my the description of the ambisonics. But before concluding this talk, let me mention 3 important research activities in the area of spatial audio processing. So the first one is targeting actually the last thing that I have just described, the HRTF measurement process. As you might have guessed, it's very complicated, it's bulky, it's expensive, and it's lengthy. So people are trying to find a way how to train a DNN network that would actually give us HRTF functions. And at the input, you could use, for example, anthropometric measurements of yourself. This would be the dimensions of your head, shoulders, neck, hair, whatever. So this would be the input features to the deep neural network. Alternatively, much better solution would be if you could picture yourself with, I don't know, a camera or smartphone and use the picture as an input to the DNN. Actually, it's I have seen some results of this, and it's well, the HRTFs are not what you would get from the real measurements, but it's a solid approximation. So this research is very active. The second example of research project is deep upscaling of ambisonic signals. Basically, this is about training a DNN that would take a low order ambisonic format at the input, and it would give you a higher order ambisonic at the output. Why is that useful? Well, in mobile networks, if the resources are scarce, it may it may happen that the network will decide that you would be able to, I don't know, transmit just the first order ambisonic. And with low order ambisonic, there are two problems. The representation of sounds on the sphere may be quite blurry. So, well, the speakers could sound somewhat hazy in the space. And the second problem is that the reproduction area around the listener, well, the sweet spot, is actually smaller with low order ambisonics. So it may be very useful to get as high order as possible in the ambisonic format. And the last research activity, which is very useful and it's ongoing, is a way how to train a network that would combine monophonic audio with 3D video. And here I can mention that you all know that there are 3D cameras that you can buy for basically no money all over the internet. However, if you want to find and buy a 3D microphone, that's very expensive. The one that I showed at the beginning, the Zelia, will set you back a couple $1,000s. So what happens is that people, when they record 3D video, they usually accompany it with just monophonic sound. So in this case, people are trying to find a DNN that would extract audio from the monophonic mixture, and it would try to locate moving sources in the 3D video. And then it would use this information to create a complete 3D audio video spatial representation. If you're interested, in the link below, people have shared a demo, and I really recommend looking at it. The results are quite nice, I would say. With this, I would like to conclude the talk, and I would like to thank you for your attention, and sorry for the troubles that I had with the sound. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vladio, for the talk. So I'm stopping the recording, and we can now say anything, any questions.